I never ever put this one in a pot and it still continued to grow. It's probably been about 4, maybe 5 months since I've been in the new house, and I haven't seen a new leaf on this one yet. No matter how many times I treated, spider mites just kept on coming for this plant. And I guess it was the sacrificial lamb. You would see that it doesn't look round anymore, it looks more of an oval type of shape. And that is probably something that I'm going to put on my 2026 goals. No plants are perfect. Even the plants in nature, they are not perfect. But that's a future problem. Goeiemorgen, goeiemiddag, goeienaand. Whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening where you are, it's always a good time to watch some plant YouTube. My name is Shanae, and in today's video, we are talking all things philodendron. This is actually going to be a two-part series. So in today's video, which is going to be part one, I'm going to be showing you all of the philodendron that I have in this house. So pretty much a philodendron collection tour, if you will. We are also going to look at all of the maintenance that needs to be done. So I have been neglecting on the maintenance of these plants, so not so much on the care. So I have been keeping up with the waterings and the fertilizing of the plants, but I just haven't gotten to all of the maintenance. Like some of the climbers you would see, they have a stake that is now too small. They have grown the stake and I haven't done anything about it. So now they are flip-flopping around. So I either need to decide whether I want to do a larger stake or a taller stake, or if I want to do a moss bowl. So all of those type of maintenance things, I have my diary here, so I'll be writing it down and making a bit of a to-do list, if you will. And then in part two, which is going to be within the next week or so, I'm then going to do all of those maintenance jobs. I'm not going to call it chores because I think chores has such a negative connotation to it. I actually enjoy doing these things with my plants or for my plants. So I'm rather going to call it a maintenance, a philodendron maintenance day. So I hope that that sounds interesting to you. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so the first one that we're going to be looking at is the micans. So I don't have a normal regular green for micans anymore. I had one, I didn't survive, long story short. It's not here anymore, but I do have the variegated one, and I got this one as probably about a 3-leaf, 4-leaf cutting. So there was 2 of those, and I'll show a picture up in here when I got it back in October, and it's grown quite nicely. I think it's doubled or tripled in size. I haven't cut it since then, so it only has these 2 long strands, and this one is quite long, so I've just decided to put it up on top so the pot looks a little bit more full. And that's the thing with philodendron micans, they are beautiful when they are a nice full basket. When it is such strands like this, it's not as impressive. Only when you come close to the plant, then you would appreciate it. But from afar, it kind of looks like there's too little going on in here. But really impressive when there is a lot going on. So I think what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to take some cuttings. So I'm going to cut it quite short, maybe around here, I would say. So there's going to be quite a lot of cuttings, maybe about 10 or 12 cuttings. And then I'm going to water proper. So I'm going to put most of the cuttings back in here to make it a bit of a full plant. I also at that point am going to change this container that it's in. I have put it in just a clear nursery pot, and then I have a
What is that?
takeaway container at the bottom. So it's done quite well in the semi-hydro setup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this pot, but only once those cuttings are already rooted and it's looking good, and I need to pot it back up here. So it's not going to be in next week's video. Next week's video I'm only going to do the cutting and then putting it in water so that it can start getting some water roots. So like I say, most of the cuttings of the micans variegated I do want to put back in the pot so that it can make a nice full hanging basket. But I also want to take about 2, maybe 3 cuttings and tie that up a moss bowl. I think it's going to be quite nice, and I do want to see what the variegated micans is going to look like once it climbs up. I think the leaves on this one is actually not a bad size, but I think once it climbs, I can probably get a quite decent size out of it, and it's going to look so beautiful if it is variegated. So I think that one is going to be interesting. So that is also something that we're not going to do next week. I'm not going to put it on a pole. So only once there is some roots, then I will put it up the pole. So that is a future project that we're looking at. So I think that's that for the micans variegated. There's another micans in here, which is the micans halo. So you'll see that this one is more of a narrow leaf and it has some nice variegation in it as well. This one I got back in December 2024, so it's been almost a year since I've had it, and it's grown quite well. That when I got it back in December, it was also a couple of cuttings, but it's grown all of this in the last year. So this one, I think I'm also going to take a cutting, so very much the same length as what the micans is going to be. And then there should be about 6 or 7 cuttings that I can take from that. I am also going to try and put maybe one of them on the moss pole and just see what it does. Hopefully it doesn't give me just a bigger variegated micans leaf. Hopefully it just gives me a nice elongated leaf. That is going to be interesting. I haven't seen, or I haven't specifically looked for that, but that one should be quite interesting. But yeah, most of these cuttings I'm also going to put back in here. I like the fact of combining these two. They kind of look the same, they're in the same family, they have the same care, they need the same conditions. So pretty much going to still keep them in a pot together, but I am going to make it a self-watering pot that is just going to look a little bit better. Yeah, so I think that is it on the micans. So I'm going to show you all of the trading plants now. So this one is my beautiful heartleaf philodendron. So this is just the normal green form. And when I got it, it was probably around here, and it has grown into a beautiful lush hanging plant. This is such a nice plant. This is perfect for beginners. Every beginner should start with a Philodendron Gloriosum. So nice. This plant, along with the others that I'll show you just now, I did speak about them a lot in my trading plant video. So I'm going to leave a link below in the description so you can check that out. So I'm not going to speak about it too much again, but you'll find all of the details of this plant, how it's been growing, where it's growing, all of those nice things you can find in that video. But yeah, this is Heartleaf Philodendron Gloriosum. So here is the Philodendron Brazil, and this is also such a nice growing plant. This one, similar to the previous one, is also in that trading house plant video, so have a look at all of the details on how I grew this one. But yeah, the only difference between the green form and this one is that it has some yellow or greenish variegation to it. But a really nice plant that really brings the jungly vibe in the house with these full bushy trailing plants. So in here is another beautiful trailing plant, and I absolutely love the fact that this one is a nice light lime green type of color. So it brings that pop of color into the house. You know, when you have all of the dark leaves in here, this kind of just brightens up the space completely. So in here I do have the Philodendron lemon lime, but I also have the neon pothos in here. And it's quite easy once you look at the two leaves to tell the difference between the two. One really noticeable difference is the emergent. So the emergent of the philodendron is a nice pinkish color, and then it gets to the lime green color, whereas the neon pothos, it just comes out quite neon. There's other differences like the texture. The philodendron is much smoother than the pothos. So I think this one is getting very long. It is almost touching the floor at this point. So I think this one is in dire need of a chop and prop. So in next week's video, I think I am going to cut it and then pop it in water. Once it is ready, it is going to go back into this pot so that it can look much fuller. At the back, you would see that there is some space for it to grow in. So yeah, that is the plan for the Philodendron lemon lime. Alright, so those are all of the trading philodendrons. Now we are going to be looking at the crawlers or the creepers. So we are going to go from good to bad. So the first one that I want to show you is this beautiful Philodendron Luxurians. How absolutely stunning. It literally looks like an artist took this plant and just painted these leaves. It is just so beautiful. I did get this plant last year sometime and the leaves definitely weren't this large. I think maybe about half of the size or even smaller than that. So it's really sizing up. I have transitioned this plant into a pond substrate, so semi-hydro substrate, and it seems to be doing quite well. The roots are insane. So this one is getting some high humidity. It is living in the grow tent at the moment, but at some point I do want to cut it again once it has a couple of more leaves. I do want to cut it and then try and grow this in my living room, just in ambient. I think it should be fine, but honestly I love this plant so much that I don't want to take it out and take that chance with this specific one. So for the foreseeable future, I'm just going to keep it in the conditions that it is happy in. So this one is kind of growing out of the pot, as you can see. I think for now it's still fine, but I think maybe the next leaf or even the next two leaves, I think then I'm going to put it in a bigger pot and then it can crawl quite nicely. Yeah, so I think that is pretty much that of this beautiful Philodendron luxurians. Right, the next one is the Philodendron Gloriosum. So also a velvety philodendron that pretty much everybody should have in their collection. If you don't want to go with this one that is a crawler or a creeper, go with the Glorious. I'll show you that in a second. But Philodendron Gloriosum is just a staple in this collection. It's one of the first philodendrons that I got. I think this one I got back in February 2023. So it's been about 2.5 years and it has grown quite a bit. Over here I'll for sure show you a picture of what the plant looked like back then, and you can definitely see that there is a lot of size up in the last couple of years. So this plant also goes through ebbs and flows. Sometimes there are times where it is so good and there's just no stopping it, and now is the time where the plant is currently in that upward trajectory. So you can even see here a new leaf is on the way, and this one I didn't get that long ago. Then there are other times where the plant would either get spider mites and it would kind of just set the plant back. When it got a little bit cooler conditions and I also moved and the plant stopped growing for a while, and yeah, so really ebbs and flows I find with this plant, but definitely a constant grower. So I hope now that it is the growing season and it is quite established in the environment that it is currently in, it is just going to get better from now onwards. So I think seeing that last year I did experience such a lot of issues with spider mites in particular, I probably will be a little bit more cautious and do a little bit more pest prevention this year around. So give it a lot more sprays, etc. So yeah, this one I do have in this rectangular pot. It's not a self-watering pot, but it is nice for this creeping plant that wants to crawl. So with this plant, there is actually quite a lot of stem. So it's actually going from this side and it's now reached the other side, and it looks like it's going to do a little bit of a turn. So hopefully it does do the whole loop around and we'll see how it's going to go. I think the light really has a big impact on this type of plant. You can see this is how the plant sits on the shelf. You can definitely see where the light source is. So there's a window over on the side, so the plant kind of just faces this way. But I think maybe I should give it a little bit of a turn and let it turn back to the front, and yeah, then it will probably look a little bit better. This one I have cut the stem before and just left it in the pot because it was rooted. So that did root and the growth point activated. So this small little plant is from that. I probably will do another cut on this one because it is so well rooted. Even here when the new leaves are, they have their own root system. There's probably about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's probably about 9 nodes on here that does not have leaves anymore. So in next week's video, I'm going to be cutting these individual nodes and hopefully they are going to sprout some new leaves. If the growth point eventually does emerge, it's going to be quite crowded in here, and then I'm going to repot it and pot those ones in their separate pots. But for now, I think that's the best way of doing things. So yeah, this is the Philodendron Gloriosum. Does look a little bit beat up with that leaf that you can see in front of you, and that was because it got damaged during the winter move. This one I think just grew a little bit smaller because it was adapting to the new environment. Hopefully this new leaf is going to be a little bit bigger than all of the rest. So yeah, this is my very nice Philodendron Gloriosum. So I like to put more than one plant in a planter, and in this one I happen to put a Philodendron Mamei in here as well. This one is not looking the greatest, but I think it's doing okay. It's rooted quite nicely in here. There's always new growth that comes from this. I like the silvery plant, but you'll see in a second that I do have a Majestic, so I do get my silvery from there. This is not a plant that is quite close to my heart, so I'm going to leave it in here, and hopefully with the additional watering and specific watering of this side where the roots are, hopefully that is going to help that plant to grow a little bit better. But yeah, Philodendron Mamei. Alright, next up is the Philodendron McDowell. So this is a plant that was a wish list for such a long time. I think about 2, maybe 3 years ago, and when I eventually got it, I fell in love with it. It's grown quite a bit. You'll see this is the leaves that it came with. This one you would see is a little bit floppy because I literally just like 5 minutes ago let this one fall to the floor, and this one was the casualty. There was a lot of noise coming from the side where there's a window, so I went to go and close the window, and as I came back I knocked over the plant and it essentially fell to the floor, and this one was the casualty. So this is the leaf that it initially came with. I think maybe these 3 leaves were the leaves that it came with. So you can see quite a decent size but quite small, and then eventually it started to size up for me. This is the newest leaf. So quite a nice size, but nothing close to where it can be. This one normally takes a knock when I do repot it. I think I did change the substrate or change the soil that it was in, and it took some time for it to adjust to that, and that's why it took a little bit of a while to get going again. But eventually it did, and it did produce these nice bigger leaves that you can see, but it is nowhere near its full potential. I've seen leaves that is quite massive, quite similar to the Gloriosum and even bigger than that. So I'm really excited to size up this one still. I absolutely love the texture that it has. It's a nice smooth texture. You can't really see the veining in here except this middle vein that is in here. It is just such a nice beautiful dark plant. I love having this one in my collection. But yeah, it's a pretty easy going plant once it's established and it is in a nice spot. But once you change anything on it, it takes some time. It's probably been about 4, maybe 5 months since I've been in the new house, and I haven't seen a new leaf on this one yet. So yeah, still establishing. But I think it is time for a new pot and maybe even a new substrate. I am toying with the idea, seeing that with the micans and the luxurians, that I've had such a lot of success in semi-hydro. I am always thinking about moving even these philodendron to semi-hydro. But because I've had these ones for such a long time, there's a little bit of a sentimental value to it. So I actually don't want to just do it and then it doesn't survive and I don't have the plant anymore. Yeah, so I'm probably going to keep it in a soil type of substrate or a chunky mix. And this one is in a round pot, as you can see. It has just about reached the end of this pot. So I think in our next video, one of our plant maintenance to-do items is going to be that we should repot this one in a rectangular pot where it has some more space to grow. I think once I give it a little bit more space and consistent, I'm consistent with the watering, but I'm not consistent with the fertilizing. Sometimes I realize the plants are, especially the philodendrons or the plants in ambient, I realize that they need water, but then I don't have the fertilizer water ready yet, and I then just decide to go ahead and just give them normal tap water without fertilizer. So I think that could be part of the reason why they're not growing as fast as they probably can. And that is probably something that I'm going to put on my 2026 goals, to be a little bit more consistent with the fertilizer for these ones. With my plants that's in semi-hydro, those ones I am quite good with because they don't really survive without that. They do need their fertilizer in the water. So yeah, these ones I'm gonna also get on top of. Now that I have the ones in semi-hydro in a self-watering setup, I will have more time to then dedicate to these ones. So yeah, Philodendron Dean McDowell. Next up is Philodendron Pastazanum. So this one is also a really nice philodendron, and when I initially saw it, I was in love. I had to have it. This one I think I got back in February 2024. So it's been a year and 8-9 months or so, so almost 2 years. And this is what I have to show for it. So as you can see, when I got it, it was quite a lush plant. It had probably about 5 leaves, and now we are stuck with only 1 leaf. So this plant was also very close to a sliding door, and that was the entry point for the spider mites. So this one was the very first plant that the spider mites would attack all the time, and I pretty much lost a lot of the leaves. No matter how many times I treated, spider mites just kept on coming for this plant. And I guess it was the sacrificial lamb, I guess. But this one and the next one that I'll show you in a second. But I do want to get this plant to some of its glory days. It is such a nice plant. So this one is also in a round pot, and it has pretty much outgrown this pot. You would see that it doesn't look round anymore. It looks more of an oval type of shape because the end of this plant is actually pushing against the pot, and that's why it's making the pot a little bit of an oval shape. So this one is definitely in a need for a repot. This one needs a rectangular pot, so I am going to get that. So in next week's video, we are going to repot this in a rectangular pot then. This one has quite a large stem, as you can see. And I think this one I'm also going to then chop, similar to what I explained with the Gloriosum. While it is in the pot, I'm going to chop it. There is a lot of roots in each one of these nodes. There's also about 10 nodes on here, so I'll maybe do like 5 cuttings or so and then see how we progress from there. But yeah, there's definitely roots coming out at the bottom. It has died off already. This one also don't get to the watering as much as I probably should, and that's why the plant is also not doing too great. But yeah, this is Philodendron Pastazanum. Last but not least of the creeping plants or the crawling plants is the Philodendron Sp Colombia. And you would see that these leaves, there are 2 of them. Both of them are not looking in the best of shape. This one is in my hallway, and I play with the dog there quite often. So this was a bowl that I threw and misdirected the throw, and it literally broke off part of the sleeve. But the rest of it seems to be quite okay, so I'm keeping it on there. I also have a second leaf on here, and this one actually looks more like my Anthurium macrolobium leaf. No? Yes? Anyways, this one I did severely underwater, and this leaf took the brunt of that. So I did have the yellow and the brown leaf margins on here because of that underwatering stress. So I just cut it off, just left those parts. I think it looks quite fine. This is probably the one plant that needs the urgent intervention or urgent maintenance, I would say. If you look at this plant, you can see that it's severely overgrown. So quite a lot of the stem is actually on the outside of the pot. So this one is in a desperate need for a repot and a pot that would be able to support that pot as well. So not too much to say. I really like this plant. I love the big leaves that it gets and the different shades of green that this plant has. It is such a stunning plant once it is in a good condition. I don't have another place where I can put it, so I think I'll just be a little bit more careful when I do play with my dog. But things like that will happen. No plants are perfect. Even the plants in nature, they are not perfect. So yeah, this one for sure. Next week we are going to repot it. I'm actually planning on putting this one along with the Pastazanum in the same planter. So those ones I'm going to try and grow them in opposite sides. So we're going to see how that works out. And yeah, so that is Philodendron Sp Colombia. Alright, so now we are going to have a look at our climbers. We'll start over here with this one. This is my very full bushy looking choco red. Yeah. I love the fact that it's so bushy, but I've had this plant for quite some time, but that's not what I wanted this choco to do. I've actually left it because I really like the bushiness of it, but I think now I am ready for it to size up. This plant also always had something going on. It also is very prone to spider mite. So if there's a one plant that I always also go and check if there's spider mites in the house, then it's this one. For some other reason, spider mites just love this. It can be in the middle of some other plants, but the spider mites would be on here and not on the plants next to it. It's the weirdest thing ever. But in any case, it's quite easy to treat. It does leave some damage, but because the leaf is so dark, you almost can't see it until you go really up close and look at what the leaf is looking like. Then you would be able to see some damage. But from afar, it actually looks quite nice. At the bottom, there is some of these leaves that have spider mite damage, and I'm sure you won't be able to tell unless you zoom in. So the plant constantly puts out leaves, but it constantly gets stuck. Even if I try to mist it, the leaves get stuck. And this damage actually comes from when the leaf is trying to push. It makes a little bit of a bend, and the petiole makes such a bend that it actually tears the leaf as it is trying to unfold. So I always need to help it, so of course I always damage it. I think it is probably a watering issue. I try to get to the watering as soon as I possibly can, but because this one is a little bit higher up on the shelf, I tend to miss it sometimes. But it's actually quite cool. I haven't lost the plant because of dry rot. It hasn't dry rotted, or maybe there is some rot in here, but the roots keep on regenerating, and maybe that is why the plant is not, or the leaf is not sizing up. But definitely it's also because it needs some support. So you would see over here when I got the plant was quite small. So I did have this little stick that is in here, and I still have it in here. The stem hasn't actually reached the stick yet, but I think maybe this one needs a moss pole for aerial roots to actually dig into and get some nutrients that way as well. So this one for sure, we're going to put a moss pole in, and because I'm not so good with watering, I'm going to do a self-watering pot for this one. I'm still debating whether I want to keep it in soil or take it out of it. Still, I think I'm going to keep it in the soil. I think I'm not going to transfer these ones to pond yet. They're not difficult to find, but they're also easy to find. You really have to search for it. So maybe once it gets a little bit bigger and I can cut it, then I will root that in water and let it get water roots and then put it in the pond. I think that's a good way of doing things. But yeah, I have really high hopes for this one. I think I actually really like the bushiness, but I'm at that point where I really wanted to size up. Not quite sure where I'm going to put it now that I think about it, if it does size up, but that's a future problem. I'm sure I'll find some space for it. So this plant actually got the name El Choco Red because of the red back and I actually cannot wait for this one to size up to then see what this back looks like. I think I have a picture of when I almost got this plant initially, or a couple of weeks into getting this plant, and it was standing in a spot where it got a lot of sunlight, and to look at the plant from the back and the sunlight shining through it, the red was so intense, it was so beautiful. Absolutely love it. If I can find the picture, I'll put it up next to me. But yeah, can't wait to see what this El Choco is going to deliver in 2026. I'm actually quite sad that it's not going to be bushy anymore. Maybe I should actually cut it and prop that part instead, and let this bushiness still continue, and use that prop as the one that I want to climb. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to chop and pop this one. Alright, so this is El Choco Red. Next up is this Philodendron Glorious, and this is a hybrid between the Philodendron Gloriosum and Melanochrysum. So it really got the best features of both parents. So it has the nice leaf shape of the Philodendron Gloriosum, but then it got the climbing nature of the Melanochrysum. So it's really a nice plant. This one I think didn't do so well when it initially came into my house, and I ended up cutting it, and there was probably only about 2 leaves on here, but the growth point quickly sprung out and started to grow. At the time, of course, because there was only 2 leaves on it, I didn't need a support stake or moss ball or anything like that, and I decided to keep on delaying it until it just never happened. And I think that's why even now it has this little support stake, which you can see it is grown well above that support stake. So it's actually not even a support stake, it's just there to hold the plant from falling over. I really wanted them to stay a little bit compact just from a space perspective while I focus on other plants. So now that I have some more time to spend on some of these plants that I've neglected the maintenance on, I think now I am ready to even find new spaces in the house for them. So I'm really excited to give this one a moss pole. I'll also give it a different pot, maybe also try a self-watering pot, so that it doesn't really have to rely on me so much to water it, and it can just wick up water when it needs to. And yeah, I think once I do those couple of things, this plant is going to explode, and I cannot wait to get those big leaves. This plant is a constant grower. As you can see here, there is already a new leaf on the way. This plant hardly ever takes a break. So yeah, really excited to see what this one is going to do now that I'm going to spend some more time on it. So this is Philodendron Glorious. Next up is actually a very interesting, unexpected experiment that actually worked. But this one is the Philodendron Splendid. So it is a hybrid between the Philodendron Melanochrysum and the Philodendron Variegated. So this one also got the best of both parents. Both are climbers, so of course this one is a climber, but it got the shape of the Melanochrysum, but then also the additional veinings and as well as the red back emergent of the Variegated. This one is such a beautiful plant. If there is probably one plant that you have to get in your collection, then it'll probably be this one. If you want a climber, it'll probably be this one. If you want a crawler, it's going to be the Gloriosum. But this is actually such a cool experiment. This plant I also got maybe 2.5 years ago, and I didn't struggle with this one at all. It just grew. I had it on a moss pole and I kept on extending it, and it did so well that it even outgrew the moss pole eventually, and it became such a schlep to go to the bathroom and water it in the shower, and I oftentimes would miss fertilizing, but this plant didn't even flinch because of that. I think this plant actually fell and it split the plant in half. Like the top moss balls literally fell over and then left the bottom ones on the plant. So I decided to give it a proper chop and prop. So each 30 centimeter pole that it had, I cut and propped it. So there was about 3 or 4 different cuttings of it. But currently I only have 2 left. I think I did give away some of the other ones. I never ever put this one in a pot, and it still continued to grow. There's actually 2 different nodes that activated on this one. So this one you'll see is the second last node, and this one is on the last node. So that is quite interesting. But this plant is growing without a pot. It is literally just relying on the moss fall to give it some water, nutrients, etc. Of course, I try to keep the moss fall as moist as I possibly can. Sometimes it does go dry, but I try not to do that. But how cool is this plant? So for that, I am not going to get rid of it. This plant has proven that it wants to be in this house. So we are going to keep it, and yeah, she is just so pretty. It looks like these bottom 2 nodes is not connected. It doesn't have roots that goes into the moss hole. So they actually also got, or this leaf at least, got some nutrients from the roots that's above it. It's actually so cool. I think I'm going to cut that off, and I might prop those 2 nodes, just put it in a prop bin and see what happens. And then these ones I'm going to take out of this moss pole, and I have another moss pole that I will order, and then I will put these ones at the bottom. Maybe I'll remove this leaf and put the root that is on this node, I will put in the substrate, and then the top one I'll connect to the moss pole that I'm going to put up. So this is going to be my plant that I'm going to grow out and grow up. Yeah. So this one is a core one. And then I have another cutting, like I said. So this one is completely fixed in the moss hole. There are so many roots probably that it has latched on, and it is still actively growing. I can see, even though there's no leaves on these nodes, there are growth points that have activated. These ones a little bit more smaller than the one on top, but I think once I cut these ones, then it is going to promote that growth point to grow. So that I think is what I'm going to be doing. And then the top one is of course just growing the leaf. This is a previous leaf that I literally just took off. So this one is also connected. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep it on this moss pole without a pot, and then I'm just going to chop the nodes and wait for the growth points to activate, and perhaps I can gift it to people. I'm definitely not going to use Sp Colombia, so I think that's the plan with this one. So yeah, I think that is it for the Philodendron Splendid. So pretty. Love this plant. Next up is the Philodendron Painted Lady. And I must say, this is a plant that I was influenced to buy. It's not really the kind of plant that I like. As you would see, all of the other philodendrons, they get big leaves. So this one is a little bit of a different shape, a little bit of a different texture. I don't really mind the texture so much, but the shape is completely different, and the growth pattern is completely different to all of the other plants that I have in my house. And on the one hand, I really like that fact because it takes up some nice space in the house and it brings a nice color to it. Like you'll see, the new leaf is a beautiful, almost lime green, and it has some speckling. And then you would see the petiole is a pinkish color, and then of course it also goes in that primary vein as well as some of the secondary veins as well. So it's a really pretty plant. It is also puffing. I just noticed there is quite a lot of puffs over here, and there's a couple over here. On top there's a few. This is a new growth point that is activated. So there's probably about 6 plants in here. I like it, but I don't love it. This new leaf that is on here, that is quite nice. Today is the first time that I actually saw this leaf, and it is in a very prominent spot in the living room. So it's something that I pass every single day, like multiple times a day. And the fact that I'm not noticing when there is something new happening does give you an indication that it's definitely not one of my favorites. I will probably miss it if I don't have it in the house, but it is definitely not something that I gravitate towards every day, which is a pity because I think it is a really interesting plant once you start looking at the different features that it has, like this two-tone, the darker and lighter colors that is in here. It's actually such a pretty plant. I actually don't mind giving this one to someone else. I mean, I've grown it quite well, I would say, without even doing a lot. I did put it in semi-hydro, so it's completely in leca and in a self-watering pot. So, and I make sure that the reservoir stays quite full, or as it is required. So I am taking care of it, but I'm just not excited about new growth or about the plant in general, which is not a bad thing. I mean, not all plants are for everybody, but I do really like the plant, and I think that's what it is. I like the plant, not really love the plant, like I speak about a lot of my other plants where I say beautiful every 2 seconds. This is the Philodendron Painted Lady. The other plant that I was influenced by, and this one is the Philodendron Yellow Flame. So it actually has such a beautiful emergent. It comes out quite lime green, and then it has some bright red on it, and eventually it hardens off, or eventually when it hardens off, it then just gets this almost two-tone kind of color, but more towards the green, but you can definitely see where the red was before. So yeah, I think maybe similar to what I mentioned on that one, I just don't like the growth pattern of this plant. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this one. I'm actually thinking of just putting it outside and seeing if that is going to help it grow a little bit better. I think maybe I do need to change the soil of this one, because I think I got this one in the beginning of 2024 and I haven't changed the substrate in probably a year, maybe a year and a half. I think I had much higher hopes. I think I expected much more brighter colors on this one, and it's not the plant's fault because I was influenced into a plant that I don't really like and that other people probably like. But I think that's the nature of this hobby. You always like the plants that other people like, and once you have it, you then figure out what plants you actually like and what plants you don't, and that's okay. I am so happy that I have this plant, but I'm not gonna lie, this plant actually brings me no joy. I do take care of it, and it actually needs a little bit more water than all of the other ones. This one probably needs to be watered once a week, where others need to be watered a week and a half between each other. So I think I'm even giving it much more attention than I give other plants. But I think this one is a perfect candidate to go outside, and we're going to see what it is going to do there. Maybe it needs a little bit higher light to grow a little bit more vigorously, and it's just not getting it in the household conditions. I think I'm going to try that. It's not going to go outside to die, of course. This is actually going to go on an empty spot that I have on my outside table. So I think I'll put it there. It does get quite a bit of sun, so maybe that is going to help it. So yeah, I think that is a good plan. This is Philodendron Yellow Flame. Alright, so I think last but certainly not least is my Philodendron Majestic, and it is way too big to fit into the camera, but I'm just gonna put it down here. You actually look at the worst leaf possible. All of the other ones actually look much nicer, but in any case, this is such a stunning plant. I absolutely love the dark foliage that it has. The backs of it on the new leaf is actually also a nice maroon red kind of color. It also has these gray spots on it that makes it quite unique looking. This is a plant that needs a pole, and this pole that is on here is just not stable. But this is a plant that I got quite a while ago, and it was quite short back then. I think it had leaves here at the bottom. Eventually, of course, as the plant grew, these leaves fell off. This one is also probably about to die. And then it has the leaves on top. It kept on sizing up, so it is quite happy. But this one needs to be watered twice a week, which is a little bit more demanding than what I would like. I also need to take care of this pole situation. I am leaning towards actually trying to put on these balls, I guess, and they are supposed to promote root growth. There is a few roots in there, but it's actually a very small ball. This plant makes quite a significant root, so I can see one in here, but I think maybe because of the space restriction, there isn't as much as what I would have expected. I think this plant is actually quite mature already. So I think what I'm going to do with this plant is cut it right over here, and then the roots that is in here I'll put down in the substrate, and then this will be one separate plant, and then the bottom I'm going to cut up, not all of it, maybe leave one or two nodes, and that can still grow in this pot that I'm going to change the substrate on, and that is going to be a separate plant. This is my beautiful Philodendron Majestic. I hope that you enjoyed watching this week's video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Have a lekker rest of your week. Bye bye!